What's up? BigHerc916, positivity, motivation, never settle for average. You know how we do it over here. Regardless of what you do in life, you have to be able to live with yourself after you make the choices you make. If you can't stand the reflection in the mirror, you don't like who you become, if you feel like you've sold your soul, then you may will and think about what you did to get to where you're at and if it was really worth it. I used to see a lot of people, it seemed like they had everything: house, cars, money, success, fame, women, but they seem to always be chasing something, whether it was trying to validate themselves, whether it was trying to cover up something that they were dealing with, guilt. But you see this a lot in the entertainment industry, and it makes you wonder, if you got all that success, all that wealth, why are you an alcoholic? Why are you doing drugs? But Terrance Howard,
give up your manhood,
he validates it, man.
I've never seen somebody recover from it. That was all the people that went to the puffy parties. That was all the people that did all those things thinking that there was never going to be a consequence for what they were doing. Get punked out and pimped out by some greater desire. You shouldn't have a greater desire than being a man.
So you see some guys struggling with that. You see Bieber struggling with that. You see some of these guys struggling with that.
They can't get it out of their head. They can't get it out of their head. The things that they did, no matter how they did it, whether they were drunk or high or whatever, you gave up your man card. You need therapy. And that's the thing that hurts them the most. And so they end up on drugs, end up every way to try and get rid of any principles there are. And that's what the business does. And the women that trade their bodies to go and get the role, they get to the point where they have their Oscar, they have their money, but they don't have their dream. They don't have the soul that they started with. So it's like achieving don't mean anything. If I get all the Nobel Prizes from doing all of this, but in the process I have to trade out all of my integrity to do it so that they can stay in place, what benefit is that if I lose my integrity? You got to go in as a principal. And what we were brought in here as men. We produce 1,500 sperm per heartbeat for a reason, because the aggression is necessary. You don't trade that in, no matter what.
Did you ever have the opportunity where you got invited and you said no to it?
Hell yeah.
What was the consequences when you said no?
Puffy invited me for weeks, asking me to come and teach him how to, wanted me to be his acting coach for a while. Go there and he's sitting around just looking. I'm like, okay, what's the material you want to work on? He's just looking at me. Then next thing you know, okay, hey, will you help me? I want to hear your music. So I come over there and I play the music. And he's sitting there, just looking at me, like waiting. Okay. So then my assistant was like, he wants to hang out with you next week. And I was like, for what? He's like, I think he's trying to f you. That's what my assistant said. And I was like, oh, okay. Now I get it. So now no more communication. Now you know to be hands off with somebody. A number of producers come in and make the approach, and you threaten to punch them in the mouth, or threaten to knock their head off for talking to you or looking at you like you're a woman. When you approach a real man about his masculinity, you're going to get a real reaction back. It's a difference when a guy walks in a room and when a man walks into a room. And a man don't take the same things that a guy will accept. So always be the man in the room. And that's always been my whole thing, and have lost businesses because I don't bend over in that way. I don't compromise. I don't play gay role.
Any aspect
I don't
of the
kiss a man.
entertainment business, whether it's music or movies, you've ran across somebody who has a relative, a family member that's famous, or that was somebody back in the day, either in Hollywood or in the music industry. And a lot of these people write off their family's fame and they're simply living off of whoever their parents were, but most of them have a drug habit or they drink. I've met a bunch of them and they all the time, or they drink that stuff. And you wonder, like, damn, man, you come from a family that's so successful. Why are you drinking? It seems like you had the coolest parents. Well, who knows what type of upbringing they had, but when you know more about the industry, you realize, well, their parents were probably somewhat compromised. They were partying and doing their thing, and then, having to live with that. And then the kids grow up in that environment. They seem to be able to have access to everything, but, there's a lot of other factors in there. And sometimes it just becomes really ugly. And you want to meet somebody famous in LA, go to one of the big rehabs. There's a bunch of them in Malibu and Newport Beach, in the very rich areas, Brentwood, Pacific Palisades, well, probably not so much now, but in those areas that are very expensive, they have these high-end sobriety homes, these rehab homes, and you'll meet people in there that you're like, damn, I wonder what happened to them. Well, they disappeared because they were in rehab. They either had a mental breakdown, a drug overdose, or somebody did an intervention. And there's a lot of that. And it just never ceased to amaze me. And it's gonna always probably be a part of that culture, man. I mean, Hollywood is not a godly place. When you talk about like people having faith, um, I would say it's more dark than anything. And the people who make it to a very high point at some point most likely had to do something to get there, unless they came from a family who was already famous. And then you have nepotism. But if you don't have nepotism and you're coming out there green from, you know, Minnesota or Nebraska or, you know, North Carolina or somewhere, and you're attractive, you have talent, you might get on. But for these people, it's the what we can get you to do part. Will you give up this? Will you do that? Are you down for this? And these things, like I said, once you do them, it's hard for you to live with them afterwards. And a lot of people struggle. A lot of people struggle with what they had to do, and trying to continue to work and not do those things that they did before, because now they're successful, but coping with how they got there. And from the outside looking in, you're like, oh man, it can't be that bad. We could, you do a little bit of this and you don't have to do it no more. But it sounds easier than what it is, man. It's like the trick the devil plays on you. He gives you a bunch of things that seem to be all the material items you want, all the fame, all the glory, but your soul, man, your soul, what is that worth? You look back when you're young, you're like, oh man, I'm doing my thing. But when that is over with, when you start maturing and 20, 30 years later and you have kids, you like, man, why'd I do that? Could I have done it without doing that? That's the question. That's the question a lot of these people have. Could I have made it without having to do what I did to get there? Could I have made it just off my talent? Man, you've seen these, they take people who are trash, straight trash, man, and they represent the just somebody who just came from nothing, and they put them up and you see them blow up. they got a top song on Billboard, and you're like, really? And you got somebody who can blow, they can sing. You heard them get down maybe in the church or somewhere. They don't want those people, man. They don't want you if you have a strong foundation. They want you if you're willing to go all the way. But the choice is yours. Terrance Howard, he put it out there. I've talked about it many times before. Let me know. Leave a comment. BigHerc916. 16.com to pick up a limited edition GTA poster signed by me for $10, or with your purchase of a Wig Splitter Porsche t-shirt, I'll throw in a free poster signed. Officially, I only got one real spanking my entire life. My mom did the best a 14-year-old could do, raising me with love and instilling values that will last a lifetime. I was a straight A student and lived to make her happy. So how did I go astray? A horrible stepdad that stole my self-worth and invoked fear turned me into a person that I struggled to overcome. From skateboarding to selling drugs, gang banging in juvenile hall, I got caught the same way many young promising men get caught up. I struggled to find my identity, getting mixed up in shootouts, crime, and the adult entertainment industry. This roller coaster continued as I juggled college, hustling, and Hollywood, eventually catching a federal bank robbery case. I found redemption in prison while serving a 120-month federal sentence and came out a man on a mission. I became a social media influencer with over 500 million views on YouTube and a life coach mentoring people all over the world. This is my journey against all odds.